The jungle moon of Vartok never slept. At night it whispered with the sound of claws on trees and growls in the thick air. No one dared walk into the forest after sunset, except when there was an offering. And tonight, there was one. A young, alien girl named Karena stood with her hands tied behind her back. Her violet skin was scraped. Her long silver hair hung in knots. Blood ran down from her lip where someone had hit her. She didn't cry. She stared ahead with wide eyes, heart pounding like a drum inside her chest. Around her, her own people, the Varn tribe, stood in a half circle. They wore bone masks and black robes. One of them, the high voice, stepped forward and shouted, "For betrayal against her blood, for secrets given, and for dishonor, she is food for the forest." The others slammed their staffs on the ground. Thud, thud, thud. Karena didn't scream. She didn't beg. She had spoken truth in a council meeting. She had warned them the humans weren't monsters, that some had saved others. That one had even healed her brother during a skirmish. For that they had called her a traitor. Now they tied her to the bloodstone, deep in the forest, and left her. For the creatures, as the last of the tribe vanished. Between the trees, Karena was alone. The air grew thick, cold. She looked up. Above her, dark vines wrapped around the tall trees. Strange glowing mushrooms lit the ground in green. Far in the distance, howls echoed. She pulled at the ropes. They didn't budge. Her legs trembled, but not from fear. From something deeper. Something more painful. Abandonment. Not even her mother had looked back. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time moved slowly when death was watching. Then, the first sound came. Sniff, sniff, low breathing, heavy paws on soil. Her eyes widened. The creatures had come. Black fur, 6 legs, spines along their backs. No eyes, only wide mouths full of sharp yellow teeth. They smelled her blood, her fear. 3 of them, circling. She held her breath. They were within a few feet. One stepped forward. Its tongue slid across her leg. Saliva burned her skin like acid. She screamed. That was the sound that echoed through the trees, and that scream is what brought him. There was no warning. Only a flash. And a snap. The first creature's neck twisted in one quick jerk, and it dropped. Dead. The other 2 snarled, leaping at the figure in the dark. But the figure moved fast. Too fast. A fist slammed into one creature's skull. Bone cracked. The second bit into something, but was lifted off the ground and thrown into a tree so hard its spine shattered. All 3 beasts now lay still. The forest was quiet again. Karena gasped, shaking. From the shadows, a human stepped forward. His face was dirty, his eyes sharp. He wore armor covered in blood and claw marks. A broken knife hung from his side. He looked at her. She looked back, frozen. He didn't speak. He just knelt and cut her ropes with a small blade. Her arms fell free, weak. She whispered, "You're human." He nodded once. She stared at the dead creatures, then back at him. "You killed them, all of them." He stood up. "They were going to eat you. You didn't have to come." He looked her straight in the eyes. "You don't leave people to be eaten." She couldn't believe it. Her tribe, the ones who raised her, left her for monsters. And the one person who came was the one they called the monster, a human. She tried to stand but stumbled. He caught her. His hands were rough but gentle. "What's your name?" she asked softly. "Reed." His voice was deep, quiet. "Karena," she said. He gave a nod. "We need to move." "To where?" "Anywhere but here." She looked at the trees. "They'll hunt me." He helped her walk. "They'll have to go through me first." As they walked into the shadows, the jungle watched in silence. And something had changed. For the first time in her life, Karena didn't feel fear walking deeper into the dark. Because beside her walked something the jungle had never seen before. A human who wasn't afraid to kill monsters and wasn't afraid to save one. The forest didn't sleep, even after the monsters were dead. Even after their bodies stopped twitching. The jungle, of Vartok still watched, still whispered. Something about it felt alive, like it was waiting to see what would happen next. Karenna limped beside the human who had saved her. Her arms ached, her feet bled. But she walked. Because he was walking, and he hadn't let go of her hand. His name was Reed. She didn't know where he came from. She didn't know why he was here. But his hands were red with dried blood and his eyes were sharper than any blade. He hadn't asked her name again. He hadn't spoken at all since they left the bloodstone. But he never once looked away from the trees, always watching, always ready. "Why did you come?" Karenna asked softly. He didn't answer. They moved through thick roots and fallen logs. The jungle floor was soft, full of moisture and rot. Strange plants glowed in the dark, blue, green, and orange. Some hissed when they passed. One even snapped at Reed's boot. He kicked it without stopping. Only after another mile did he finally speak. "I was tracking them." Karenna blinked. "The creatures?" He shook his head. "The ones who tied you up." She stopped walking. "My people?" He turned, his face calm. "Not your people. Not anymore." She swallowed hard. Something in her chest cracked. He was right. They weren't her people now. They found a small overhang of rock beside a broken tree where they could rest. Reed pulled a pack off his back and handed her a small metal flask. She sniffed it. "What is this?" "Water." She drank greedily, ignoring the sting in her throat. She hadn't had water in 2 days. Reed crouched beside her, pulling a small kit from his belt. He cleaned her wounds. Quiet, careful. His hands were big, calloused, clearly made for killing, but they moved with strange gentleness as he wiped the dirt from her cuts and tied cloth over her ankles. "Why are you helping me?" she asked again. He didn't look at her. "Because no one helped my sister." The words hit her like a blade. She stared at him. "What happened?" "She was left behind, like you, on another planet, by her own command." His voice was low, bitter. "I was too late." Karenna's heart tightened. "And now? Now I don't show up late." Silence hung in the air like thick smoke. The fire between them crackled low, just embers. Karenna finally whispered, "You're not like they said." He looked up. "Who?" "My tribe. They said humans are beasts, cruel, cold. They said your hearts are machines." Reed smirked slightly. "Maybe some are, but not you." He said nothing. Then finally, "I'm just a man who won't walk past someone tied up to die." A distant howl echoed through the trees. Karenna flinched. Reed stood quickly, grabbing his rifle and scanning the trees. "More coming?" she asked. "No," he said after a moment. "Not yet. But your people will send someone, probably many. They'll think you stole me. They'll be wrong. You still killed 3 of their beasts, and their law says the blood price must be paid." Reed looked at her with calm, hard eyes. "Then I'll pay it." Karenna's voice shook. "How?" He reached into the firelight, picked up his blade and spun it once in his hand. By reminding them why they should be afraid of humans. For the first time Karenna saw it. Not just the protector, but the weapon. This man had been built by war, shaped by loss. His hands were for saving, but also for destroying. She should have been scared. But she wasn't. She felt safe. "You could have left me," she whispered. "I didn't. You could have just passed by, waited for the creatures to finish. I didn't." "Why?" He finally met her eyes, and what he said next made her breath catch. "Because I saw someone who didn't scream when tied to death. That's not weakness. That's worth saving." The fire burned low as the jungle grew quiet again. Reed sat with his back to the stone wall, his rifle across his lap. Karenna leaned back beside him, her shoulder just touching his. She had nothing left. But in that moment, she didn't feel empty. She felt seen. She felt protected. She felt not alone. And in the cold dark of the jungle moon, One human with blood on his hands had done more for her than her entire tribe ever had. By sunrise, the jungle smelled of wet leaves, smoke, and something worse, ash from burned bone. Karena opened her eyes slowly. Her body was still sore, but something inside her had changed. She was no longer just a girl tied to a stone. She was the reason a human had shed blood in the dark. Beside her, Reed was already awake, crouched low, studying the footprints near their camp. He didn't smile when she woke up. He only said 2 words. "They're coming." Karena sat up quickly, heart racing. "My people?" Reed gave a slow nod. "Hunters, at least 4. Fast ones." She stood, shaky on her feet. "They won't just kill you. They'll skin you, feed you to the fireworms." He didn't flinch. "Let them try." Karena stepped closer. "You don't understand. Tribal hunters don't stop. They'll chase us for days if they have to. You've shamed them by saving me." "I didn't. Do it for them, but they don't care." Reed loaded his rifle and handed her a small blade. She stared at it. "You want me to fight?" "No," he said. "I want you to survive." They moved quickly through the forest. Reed led, always watching, always quiet. Karena followed, every step reminding her of her damaged legs. Still, she pushed forward. The fear in her heart was real, but so was the man in front of her. He didn't speak much, but every move he made told her he was ready to die for her. By mid-morning, they crossed a dried riverbed. Karena stopped to catch her breath, bending down near a cluster of moss. That's when she heard it, the snap of a branch, not behind them, in front. Before she could shout, arrows flew from the trees. Reed grabbed her and rolled behind a thick root just in time. The ground shook with footsteps. Tribal war cries filled the air. "They circled around us." Karena gasped. "They're driving us into the trap." Reed pulled her behind a fallen log, eyes narrowing. He wasn't afraid. He was planning. 3 hunters appeared, wearing masks made of tusk and bone. Their skin was marked with war paint. One raised a curved spear. "Return the girl," the leader barked in the tribal tongue, "and we will grant you a fast death." Karena froze. She knew that voice. It was her cousin. Reed stood up slowly, shielding her with his body. His voice was calm. "No." The hunter's eyes narrowed. "Then bleed." He raised his hand, and all 3 attacked at once. Karena screamed, but it was too late. Reed moved like a shadow. The first hunter lunged. Reed shot him in the leg, then crushed his throat with his elbow. The second hunter jumped down with a blade, but Reed rolled, grabbed his wrist mid-air, and twisted it until the bone snapped like dry wood. The third didn't even get close. Reed stabbed him with his own spear. Blood painted the leaves. The jungle went silent again. Karena looked around, shocked. "You didn't hesitate. They would have killed you. You didn't even look scared." Reed finally turned to her, his face unreadable. "I've seen worse." They moved again. Faster now. Karena's heart pounded harder, not from fear of the jungle anymore, but from the fear of what this man had already survived. He wasn't just a fighter. He was a weapon walking on 2 legs. But he had chosen to protect her by nightfall. They stopped at a rocky overhang near a small pool. Karena leaned against the wall, her chest tight. "My cousin was one of them," she whispered. Reed said nothing. "I used to play with him when we were small. He gave me my first necklace. And today, he tried to feed me to monsters." Reed crouched beside the water, filling his flask. "That's what blind loyalty does," he said. "Makes people forget who they love." She looked at him. "And what about you? Who did you love?" He paused, only the sound of water moving. Then, "My sister." Karena's voice softened. "What was her name?" Reed stood, eyes on the stars. "Above. Doesn't matter anymore. They took her name when they left her behind." Karena stepped close, placed her hand on his arm. "They left me too." Reed looked at her. For the first time, his eyes weren't just hard. They were tired. "You're not alone anymore," she said. He nodded slowly. "Neither are you." Above them, the jungle slept. Below, two souls once hunted, once betrayed, now moved together like one breath. And Karena began to realize the only thing more dangerous than the creatures in the jungle was the human who chose to save her. The vines moved. They weren't supposed to, but they did. They twisted down from the branches above, slow and silent, like snakes with no eyes. Karena hadn't seen them before, but now she couldn't stop staring. They were green and thick, with tiny red thorns pulsing like veins. One of them brushed Reed's shoulder. He froze, then whispered, "Don't move." They were deep in, the scarred hollow, the part of the jungle that even the oldest tribal maps avoided. No fires worked here. The air felt thin. The trees were too tall. And the vines hunted. Karena swallowed. Her voice was shaky. "We can't stay here." "I know," Reed muttered. He slowly reached for his knife, but the vine had already begun to tighten around her. Before she could scream, it wrapped around her ankle and yanked her into the air. Karena cried out as more vines snaked around her legs and arms, lifting her up like prey. Her body twisted in midair. Her back hit a tree. Reed moved instantly. He leaped onto a nearby rock and slashed at the nearest vine, cutting it free from the trunk. Karena dropped halfway, but another vine caught her by the waist. A sharp thorn sliced her skin. She was bleeding, screaming, and the jungle smelled it. The vines writhed faster now, dozens of them. They weren't just hunting, they were feeding. Reed roared and pulled out his sidearm. He fired into the tangle of roots above. Black sap sprayed from the trees. Vines shrieked like animals. Still, they didn't let go. Karena's vision blurred. Her fingers went cold. Then something changed. Reed dropped the gun. He took his blade and ran into the vines. He slashed wildly, carving a path through the living net. Thorns tore at his arms and face. Blood ran down his neck. But his eyes never left hers. "Stay with me," he shouted. "I'm trying," she gasped, choking on her breath. One vine wrapped around her throat. She clawed at it until Reed's knife sliced across it with a wet snap. She dropped into his arms. He caught her and carried her back out through the writhing vines, roaring like a wild animal. When they reached the edge of the hollow, the vines stopped, as if the jungle knew it had lost. Karena coughed hard, eyes wide with terror. Reed laid her down on soft moss and checked her wounds. "You're okay," he said softly. She shook her head. "No, I'm not. You're alive." She looked at him, chest rising and falling. "You went into the vines. I wasn't going to let them have you. You could have died." "I've died before," he said quietly. "This time, I had a reason to come back." The fire they made that night was small and quiet. No talking for a while, just breathing, healing. Karena's skin stung with cuts, but it was her heart that felt the heaviest. He had risked everything again, for her, and something inside her cracked a little more. Later, as the stars came out, she sat beside him, watching the flames. "Back in my tribe," she said, "they told us that humans were made only for war." Reed didn't respond. "They never said you'd bleed for someone like me. They never said you'd throw yourself into monster vines just to pull me out." He finally looked at her. Maybe they never met the right human. She reached out and touched his hand. "Maybe I never did either." Silence again. Then Karena said something she hadn't said in years. "Thank you." Reed gave her a small nod. "You don't owe me anything." "I don't owe you," she whispered. "I trust you." He blinked, just once, then nodded again. "You should sleep. We move at first light." That night she slept with her head resting near his side, listening to the slow, steady rhythm of his breath. And deep in the wild, twisted heart of the jungle, Karena dreamed not of bloodstone altars or hungry creatures, but of a man with bloody hands who had chosen to become her shield. The forest was quiet but not peaceful. Birds didn't sing here. Trees didn't sway. Even the wind felt like it held its breath. Karena woke slowly, eyes blinking against the soft orange light of morning. She was wrapped in Reed's cloak. Her wounds were bandaged again. A small fire crackled low nearby. He was still awake, sitting on a stone back to her, sharpening a blade with slow, steady strokes. She watched him in silence for a long moment. Then she whispered, "You never sleep, do you?" Reed didn't turn. "Not when I'm protecting someone." She sat up, wincing slightly. Her body was still healing, but her voice had grown stronger. "Why are you like this?" she asked quietly. Reed paused. "Like what?" "So calm. So controlled. You kill without blinking. You carry me through nightmares. But you don't ask for thanks, or praise, or anything." He still didn't look back. "You risked your life in the vines. You broke bones for me." "Why?" Reed placed the blade down, then finally turned to face her. "Because once," he said slowly, "someone did the same for me." Karenna leaned forward. She had seen his scars, felt his pain in his silence. But now, he was opening a door. "Tell me," she said softly. "I want to know." He stared into the fire. "When I was a kid, I lived on a border planet, forgotten, poor, full of dust and hunger. One day, raiders came, burned our town, took everything. I was 10. Karenna held her breath. They lined us up, said they'd kill every boy old enough to fight, one by one. I watched my brother fall. Then they pointed at me. His hands clenched into fists. But before the trigger was pulled, someone stepped in. A woman. No one knew her. She wasn't from our world. She fought like she had nothing to lose." Karenna's voice was small. "Did she win?" "She bought time," Reed said. "Enough for me to run." "And her?" He looked away. "She didn't make it." Karenna's chest tightened. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "She died for a stranger," he said. "She didn't have to, but she did." He met Karenna's eyes now. "And I swore that I would be that person, for someone else, someday." Tears stung her eyes. "You kept that promise," she said. "I didn't know it would be for an alien girl tied to a rock," he said with a small smile. She laughed softly. "I didn't know I'd meet a human who made me feel safe." They sat quietly for a few minutes, only the fire speaking. Then Karenna asked, "Do you hate my people?" He didn't answer right away. "I hate what they did to you," he said. "But no, I don't hate them, I just understand them." "You understand people who tried to feed me to monsters?" He nodded. "Fear makes people cruel. They saw you as a danger because you thought differently. You challenged what they believed. That's enough to get anyone marked." Karenna looked down at her hands. "I just told the truth. Most people are afraid of truth." She leaned, closer to him now. "Not from weakness, but from trust. You saved me, again and again. Not because I was useful, not because I could pay you." He met her gaze. "Because I saw you fight, even when no one stood beside you." Karenna placed her hand over his. "You don't have to walk alone anymore." He didn't pull away. For the first time, his hand gently curled around hers. Night returned. The stars above seemed clearer, the air warmer. Or maybe that was just them, two survivors in a broken world, choosing to stand beside each other, and, deep in her heart, Karenna knew. She hadn't just been rescued. She had been seen, and so had he. The sky burned red. Clouds twisted above the jungle like smoke from a giant fire. The air was thick, hot, heavy, and angry. Karenna walked slowly, at first. Her cloak dragged through the dirt. Beside her, Reed marched in silence, one hand on his weapon, the other holding her steady. They were headed back, to the place where she had been tied, to the tribe that had abandoned her, to the leaders who had sentenced her to die. "What if they attack us again?" Karenna whispered. "They will," Reed said calmly. "You'll kill them?" Reed looked at her. "Only if they give me a reason." She didn't know whether to be afraid or relieved. By sunset, they reached the edge of the tribal circle. It was just as she remembered. Stone huts, spiked towers, flames burning in black pits. Children stared from behind doorways. Warriors stood tall, confused at first, then angry. They recognized her and they saw him, the human, the one with blood on his hands and fire in his eyes. Drums started. War drums. The ground trembled with rhythm. Her cousin, the one who had led the hunters, stepped forward. His chest was painted in red lines. His eyes were full of hate. "The traitor returns," he growled, "and she brings the beast." Karenna stood taller. "I bring the man who saved me." "You were given to the jungle," he snapped. "You were food. You are nothing now." She pointed at Reed. "Then why did he come for me when none of you did?" No one answered. Reed stepped forward. Slowly, deliberately. He walked straight up to her cousin, face to face. "You left her tied to die. I broke the monsters who came for her. And I'll do the same to you." Gasps spread through the tribe. Her cousin reached for his blade. Reed moved faster. Snap. His hand shot forward, grabbing the man's arm, twisting it backward with brutal force. The blade dropped. Reed pulled him closer. "This ends now." Then, with one swift motion, he broke her cousin's arm clean at the elbow. The man dropped to the ground, screaming. The drums stopped. No one moved. No one dared. Karenna stepped beside. "Reed, I was your daughter, your sister, your friend," she said, looking at the villagers. "You tied me to die because I told the truth. But the human you called evil, he carried me through fire and death." She raised her voice now. "He killed monsters. He healed my wounds. He fought for me, and he never once asked to be called a hero." A silence fell over the tribe like fog. Then, a small voice came from a child. "Is he staying with us?" Karenna looked at Reed. He looked back. "No," she said softly. "Because I'm not staying either." She turned to the elders. "You ruled with fear. You offered your own to the dark. I won't be part of this anymore." One elder stepped forward. "You leave now. You're no longer Varn." She removed her tribal necklace and dropped it in the dirt. "I'd rather be nothing than part of this." She took Reed's hand. "Let's go." As they walked away, no one followed. No one stopped them, because they all saw it now. The girl they thought would die had returned stronger than ever, and she did not walk alone. She walked beside a human, a man with blood on his hands, but peace in his heart. The jungle faded behind them. No more tribal drums. No more bloodstone altars. No more voices calling her a traitor. Just silence. And the soft sound of two people walking. Karenna didn't look back. Not even once. Beside her, Reed kept his rifle, across his back and his guard up. But for the first time, he wasn't walking ahead of her. He was walking with her, equal steps, side by side. By midday, they reached the cliffs, an open place where green hills dropped into clouds. The air was cooler here, clean. The sky felt wide. Karenna sat down on a flat rock. Her legs still ached, but her spirit didn't. Not anymore. Reed sat next to her. He removed his gloves and let the wind touch his hands. She glanced at him. "Where will you go now?" He looked into the distance. "Nowhere." She raised an eyebrow. "You don't want to go back to your people?" "I don't have any." Karenna tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "My unit left me behind months ago," he said. "Shot down on a recon run. They thought I was dead." She frowned. "So you've been out here alone?" He nodded. "Until I found you." Karenna looked down. "I was left behind too," she whispered. "But you came back stronger," he said. She smiled. "Only because someone carried me through hell." Reed glanced at her, quiet. "You didn't just survive," he said. "You changed. You're not the girl tied to that rock anymore. Karenna looked at him. And you're not just the man with blood on his hands. He chuckled. Then what am I? She reached out, fingers brushing his hand. You're the reason I believe in something again. The wind blew stronger now, lifting her hair like silver threads in the sun. Karenna stood. Come with me, she said. He stood too. Where? She looked out over the hills. I don't know. Somewhere far. Somewhere where people like us aren't thrown away. He studied her face. Do you mean that? I mean it more than anything I've ever said. He nodded. And for the first time since his crash, Reed smiled. Not a small one. A real one. She took his hand and he didn't let go. That night they made a fire on the cliff's edge, not to hide from monsters. Not to warm frozen skin, but to mark something new. A beginning. Karenna leaned against him as stars filled the sky. I used to think my people were everything, she said. And now? I think you are. Reed looked at her. Are you sure? She nodded. You broke the monsters who tried to eat me. You broke the man who left me behind. And you never once broke your promise. He said nothing. So she said one more thing. I stand with you. Wherever you go. And from that day forward she did. Not as a rescued girl. Not as a forgotten outcast. But as his equal. His partner. His peace. The galaxy would never know their full story. But somewhere, deep in the jungle stars, two warriors who were once nothing became everything to each other.